So thanks everyone for coming out and listening to this talk. So today I'll be talking about harmonizing units of measure and kind of an initial prototype that myself and some other OBO and non-OBO people have been working on, including Handy. Sorry, I didn't put you on the title here, to harmonize the existing systems of measure on the web for units of measure. So just a really quick recap on FAIR. I'm sure everyone has heard this to death. Just wanted to point out that, not only is it supposed to be for humans as well as machines, which has been touched on, but this applies to data as well as vocabularies. So to make the data fair, the vocabulary has to be fair. And some of the points about it being broadly shared, applicable language, et cetera, but also I want to point out that it should be qualified references to other metadata, which in some terms could also mean mappings to other systems. So that'll be kind of a big theme in this talk as well as in this conference. So just a little bit of background on what exists already within the vocabulary space for units of measure. So there are very many ontologies, units ontology from OBO, UO, that is, QUDT, which is formerly a NASA-built system, but now it's a 501c3, independently managed. ONM, which kind of came out of a food sciences background. That's also very large. That's, I think, the largest one of these. OBOE from the ecology world, the NERC P06 vocabulary from the British Oceanographic Data Center. And there are more, but these are kind of some of the main ones here that I wanted to talk about that exist as vocabulary systems. All of these are independent from each other, different maintainers, different developers, et cetera, different users, different use cases. Finally, I also want to mention UCOM, which is a pattern-based system. It's not an ontology, but it's basically a pattern-based system that's used in a lot of healthcare interoperability resources. So this actually gets used in hospitals, and it's basically a code-based system to delimit units in a unique way. But it's not an ontology or vocabulary, it's a system of codes. And I just want to mention briefly, Simon Cox had asked me to do this, mention the CODATA working group on the digital representation units of measure. Myself and the people in this talk are not officially part of that, but we're kind of doing something similar to them. And so I wanted to nod out that there are other working groups within a more formal SI, BIMP, NIST, purview who are working on similar things. But this is kind of something that we wanted to cook up for everyone's use, whoever wants to use it or not. And it's still a prototype, so let me tell you more about it. So the long and short is that this prototype makes use of the UCOM code system and uses that to map out to all the other existing systems. So you can see here an output of the new system. So an example generated term. So from just the, I'll show this in the next slide, but you can see just from the UCOM code meter.second -1, so meter per second, it generates the label, the definition, links to the SI code, as well as all of these links to the various other systems, QDT, et cetera. So it links out to all the other systems. And this isn't live yet, but these will be available. We still have yet to find an appropriate domain. We're hoping to get something like this and make this available. So the long and short is that it's a Python script that converts these UCOM codes into sorted, ascended, unique strings, which then from which we generate all of these annotation properties and mappings. So just a little bit about the protocol, how it works. So given an example, an input code, such as like nanomolar per liter per day, the script will capture this into the constituent unit parts. So nanomolar, liter, day, et cetera, per liter per day, et cetera. And it'll further capture that into the prefixes and the base units, as well as the exponents. So here it'll capture nano and mole. Here it will capture liter and the exponent -1, et cetera. And based on some lookup tables that we have for SI units as well as other UCOM code units, it will go and figure out what these are. So the mole code will figure out that it's mole based on these mapping tables. It will also use the prefix table, and this will be what's used to generate the labels and definitions. So for example, based on this code, it'll generate the label nanomole per liter, per nanomole per day liter. So additionally, what it'll do is it'll alphabetically sort this to a canonical code, so nanomolar per liter per day, et cetera, as opposed to day liter, so that we can have one unique one within the IRI. We're hoping that when the server is set up, this can be rendered dynamically, so that if people use different versions of codes in their databases, it'll render to the same page, hopefully. So that is the goal here, but that isn't set up yet. And as you can see, it'll go and look up the UCOM, it'll go and use these lookup UCOM codes against mappings that myself and Dr. Simon Cox, primarily him, have made to other systems. For the other systems, for example, QUDT, here you can see, here's like a little example of a mapping table, and it'll go and find, based on this UCOM code that's been sorted, it'll go look that up and say, oh, okay, perfect, here's the QUDT nanomole per liter day unit. And then finally, it'll apply a standard URL escape character function to generate a valid NC name from the character ID. And so, for example, something like nautical mile, the code like this is a little bit funky, which won't work in a URL bar, but using the kind of standard escape character system, it'll generate something like this, which will be the ID at the end of the prefix, at the end of the URI. And so finally, we get our finalized URIs with all of the other annotation data that we're adding on, and it's a continual process. So just really briefly, I don't have too much time, so I'm going to really go quick here, but basically you can see that QDT and O&M have quite a lot of terms within them. The new system at the moment has almost as much as O&M and slightly more than QDT individual concepts. So this is good, we're getting somewhere with these mappings to other systems. And you can see that we've made a lot of mappings to other systems. The first column is concepts mapped, but that are not unique. And the second column is concepts mapped that are unique. So for example, we have 200 unique concepts from UO, 1,000, 100, et cetera, from ONM. And so just to really briefly here, I just wanted to show this. Dr. Mungle had wanted me to show this, and it's basically like a quick Venn diagram of what the coverage within the systems already. So you can see, for example, there were only 2 unique terms that we pulled into this new system using from NERC, from the marine vocabulary, but there were 689 from O&M and 369 from QDT, 12 from UO, et cetera. Only 42 common unique concepts across all 5 systems, interestingly enough. So anyway, future directions. So we need to set up the Perl server to run this protocol in the background, something like a Flask server. The front-end UI will enable people to type in these codes and then dynamically run the protocol to generate new units, so that hopefully we can, when people come to the site, can generate units in real time based on their codes. And then we also want to expand out to additional features such as additional languages. It would be great to get Chinese, French, Spanish, to have some collaborators who are interested in doing this. This project is always open and welcome to new people. We'd love to have more people coming on board. Maybe it'd be great to add dimension vectors for dimensional analysis like QUDT has. And then finalize and double check these mappings for other systems. Dr. Simon Cox and I have done this manually, so this needs to be checked, et cetera. So I'm a little over, so I'll leave it there and I'll take questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Kai. What Kai is doing is really exciting. And I've seen it in action, and it was deemed impossible previously, so apparently it's not. Thank you for proving them wrong, Kai. And there are lots of different standards. So in the interest of time, I would like to go ahead, but Kai, I think one question is, what's your what's your goal for the next year to finalize when it comes to this project?
Well, yes, I just want to plug that this project is still ongoing. It's open source. We'd love to have more people jumping on board. I know, Handy, you've expressed interest. I'm sorry I didn't get back to you about the last communication we had, but I'd love to get more people on board. I'd love to get more help, more languages added. James and I don't exactly have a deadline for the server, but as soon as we can get it up, the better. So in the next year, I think this hopefully should be up. And we're not trying to eat anyone's lunch or do anything like that. We're just trying to harmonize. There's so many existing systems. So as soon as we can, I think within the next year, we should have something up. But again, work in progress, lots of things to be done here. People are welcome to join if interested.
Yeah, the dynamic new addition of new units is, I'm sure, very exciting to many communities and that are listening to us today.
On the chat, he said that there is a NLM resource for UCOM. Can Kai comment on that?
The what resource?
Yours? The UCOM syntax. There is a website that validates the UCOM syntax and will convert values in any EUCOM unit to values in any commensurate unit. Did you
Right.
see the chat?
Yeah, I'll take a look at the chat. So my understanding, yes, that link there, that's their server that's used, that's the code-based system. So those aren't web vocabularies. Those are just like the codes like micromole.l, and that'll just make sure that that's like a valid code within their system, but that's not a web link. And it doesn't have all the annotation properties and everything I showed. So that's what they currently have. And it's a great system. It works really well. No one's dying because they're getting the wrong drug from it, but it's not a vocabulary on the web. That's the difference.